Let's begin.
Hey everybody, this is KSHMR, and in this tutorial I want to go over my new hip-hop single, Haath Varthi, with the rapper from India, MC Stan. This is the track as you hear it.
मेरे गानों पे हाथ वर्ती अगर नहीं करा यहाँ पे तो मार पड़ती.
And right now, the project that we're in is what I would call a pre-stems project. This is where everything is still a synth, it's MIDI before I've bounced it all into stems. And then I'm gonna have a second project that we'll get into where we're dealing pretty much just with audio. And it gets a lot easier to see all of the elements and how they're interacting with each other. But to show you how the project started, I think it's good to be in this one first so you can see the MIDI, you can see the decisions that I made. For starters, the most obvious element is this flute. And this comes from Sounds of KSHMR Volume 4. It's right there in the Everything Else folder in Instruments. The original sample is quite a bit more muted. So right away, I went in with the EQ, I just boosted the hell out of the highs, and then I put a little bit of kickstart on just to give a pumping feel. So although the drum beat is not just a boom, 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 flute is still sort of breathing to the beat of the boom, 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 the 4 on the floor. And it ends up creating like a constant sense of rhythm. Even when there's no drums playing, you feel like it's pumping. So that's the flute. We've got kickstart on it. And then I have this distortion. The Devil Lock Deluxe. This is without it. And this is with it. The distortion naturally just kind of brings everything out. We do want people to focus on this flute, but it would be too much to have it going on for the entire length of the track. So creatively, we make some decisions to make it go away at points or come back and it's the low octave. And so let's listen through and see when we're deciding to do that.
सोचेंगा ऐसा क्यों लिखता क्योंकि मैं सीखता सीखनेस भरा मेरा डोपनेस स्केटबोर्ड एरोवन टाइटिस तरी कीड़ में फुल होमलेस बोनलेस करकेस मुझ पे भी छोड़ डाला बीट को मैं छोड़ डाला बीट को करूंगा डिस्को एमसी जन.
And here you hear it goes down and it's filtered.
कैसा हुआ मेरे को प्यार कैसा हुआ मेरे को प्यार मेरा होमी बोला मार तूने झूठ बोला क्यों मैंने लिया तेरा साथ मेरे गानों पे हाथ वर्ती.
And in hip-hop music, being repetitive, having one catchy loop and it playing the whole time is definitely the name of the game. But I wanted you to constantly feel that melody without it being the exact same sound playing it over and over again. So that was a decision between, going from the high octave to the low octave. And at times, instead of the flute playing it, we let this vocal chop play it. And I just did another tutorial explaining my new style of doing vocal chops I think is really fun. I won't go into all of it here, but the gist of it is I find a sample that has different vowels in it. So there's like a doot and a dot and a dit. And then I put it into a sampler and I'm able to control which version of the sample that you're hearing by the velocity. So instead of the velocity affecting the volume, the velocity is choosing the sample that you hear. So instead of just do, you get a do-ka-do, which sounds a little bit more human, as when someone's singing a melody, they usually don't just use the exact same do. They might do a do-ka-do, do-ka-do, do-ka-do. And it gives you a bit more of like a beatbox percussive feel, like you have the whole drum kit. You've got the kick, you've got the snare. I like this compressor, the Volf compressor. It gives you some lo-fi options, and it gives you a really nice kind of parallel compression sort of sound that brings out the attack quite a bit. So I've got a little bit of wow on it, which is making the pitch modulate, and it's got some lo-fi. So here's without that. And this is with it. And then next we have something you'll see me use all the time. This is the OTT Niles. It's kind of famous amongst my friends. I've passed it around. Really all it is the multi-band compressor from Waves. And we've got no upward compression going, just some subtle downward compression. And it just raises everything. So when you put it on, you think it's sounding better. Now, as we go down, we're going to start looking at some of the ambience. Although there's pretty much three elements, bass, flute, and drums, there's a lot of ambience which helps make it feel like the party is staying alive. And the first one is this vocal thing. And that, of course, comes from Sounds of Kashmir. This one is Sounds of Kashmir Volume 3 in the tribal section. I'm a really big fan of sounds, ambience that comes at the end of every 4 bars that kind of tugs you back into the beginning of the next bar, as opposed to a loop. If there's nothing sort of transitioning, it's a missed opportunity in my mind to add some energy there. And in dance music, you do it a lot with sweeps, maybe like a reverse synth, a reverse vocal. And in this case, we're using this tribal ah-woo thing, which I think is cool, adds to the party, and of course this is a party track. Down here we've got risers. One of my favorite risers to make is using strings. So I do this all the time. In this case I'm using Nexus. It's called the big synth strings. It sounds like, and I just put the pitch bend range. I've got the max set to 40. It's going to give you a riser that is less cheesy sounding than a supersaw or like a super EDM synth. There's something slightly more organic about it. Now we're going to take a look at the bass. Now keep in mind, the bass in this project is not sidechained. I do that in the stem project because going into the stem project, I don't want to have anything already sidechained, as I feel that for stem mixing, you want as much control over the sidechain as possible, because really that's a part of mixing. So everything here is going to be not sidechain. Just keep that in mind. We've got our bass. The bends in this song are really the signature. It gives it this growl. And I was definitely inspired by Mirchi. I think they do that as well, which is a Divine song, which is also produced by Phenom, who's a co-producer on this track. So you can see I'm using the pitch bend in Serum. You can also use the pitch bend in the MIDI in Ableton. I just find it kind of annoying to have to go in there to find the MIDI control to go to the pitch bend. And if you do it right from Serum by toggling this thing and automating that, then anytime you hit A and bring up automation, you can see all your automation right here in the main window, which I think is a lot more convenient. So we do this down into the note and then out of the note. So it's always kind of going around the note. So that's our top bass. It sounded better to me just to have these two, the 808 sounding bass and that one that's doing all the bending over each other without much EQ. You see they both got the same pitch bends, and this one is just adding the 808. So those are our two basses. A lot of bending. I mean, if you look at all this automation, the bending is just going crazy. I've got the filter going as well. So there's some times where the filter comes up, just to give you a little bit of a suction. If you guys are curious, this is a Serum patch that came from this Echo Soundworks Vivid. Then at certain points, we also have just a straight up 808. Really just for this kind of dreamy section.
Let's begin.